Good morning. I don't know about y'all, but I sure am glad it's Friday. Can I get another amen? Heck fire. Let's just call it off. Y'all bow with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, for another beautiful day in your kingdom, we are eternally grateful for all the many gifts and blessings you give to us individually and corporately. We say thank you. Lead us and guide us. Let us do things that please you. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your forgiveness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Y'all have noticed that Kevin has become a very consistent show here. Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to respectfully ask for two bills today. The first one's under modified structure rule. It's the number one bill there under that, House Bill 741. This bill is a sludge bill. It's one that ACCG and GMA support and also the EPD support. It will just allow local government to have some input through their zoning process and land application sludge. Also requires that any hearing held on a land application permit be held in that jurisdiction. And again, all parties are supportive of that bill. That's HB 741.
Any questions? Next one.
The next one's on your back page at the top, HB 719. This is a result of a committee that the leadership put together. Chairman Willard and others in the room were involved in this committee, and I'm carrying it on behalf of the committee. This addresses the lost issue as a result of the Georgia Supreme Court decision finding that baseball arbitration was unconstitutional. This is just an attempt to codify the fix for those 35 counties and cities that were that had went through baseball arbitration. That's all this does, and again, I appreciate all the work of everyone involved in this.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before I go to Mr. Broderick, I was introduced to somebody this morning, and if y'all will turn around and look right back there, that is Sam Moore. Sam, do you get sworn today? Tuesday. This is the new man that takes Calvin Hill's spot. And we welcome you to the House, or to the Rules Committee. I don't know what they'll do to you in the House, but this is a real nice committee. Nobody ever gets on to you. Mr. Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look in the middle of your page, I bring to you House Bill 835. And it is unamended copy LC 335367. This is the annual drug update bill. Several sections in here. The top sections deal with newly identified Schedule 1 compounds, synthetic marijuanas, and bath salts, which we put into the code. Then it goes on down as we have new drug entities that are approved by the FDA. We write those into our code section as dangerous drugs so that they can be under regulation. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has any. But again, it's just the annual drug update bill for you.
Mr. That was 835?
HB 835, yes, sir.
Mr. Weldon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation.
I'm sorry, I waved that. I inadvertently hit that button. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, I'll ask for a favorable report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My bill is House Bill 646. That's the second bill under modified open on your front page, House Bill 646. Mr. Chairman, this is a retirement bill voted unanimously out of the Retirement Committee this week. It only affects magistrate judges. When we created the magistrate retirement system last decade, we started off conservatively and didn't let them all participate. The system is running very well now. The actuarial study came back that we can allow not only our full-time chief magistrates but our part-times to participate as well. It would affect about 14 part-time magistrates in the state and give them opportunity to participate in the retirement system.
How many will it affect?
There are only 14 part-time, and an informal survey, Mr. Chairman, said 9 of them would like to participate in the system.
I'm just going. How do you do part-time?
It's pro rata, Mr. Chairman. The retirement pay-in is based upon their salary, and of course what they get back is based upon their salary. This is one of those systems that we created that requires no state appropriations. It's totally funded by the operations of the magistrate court, fines and filing fees and whatnot. In about 14 of our counties, we don't have what we call full-time magistrate judges. And my county is a large county, for example, 130,000 people, but our magistrate judge is still considered part-time. He has a law practice also. So my only choice, if I want him to participate in the retirement system, is I have to make him full-time. But for us, the system works well for him being considered part-time. Now, he does have several assistant magistrates that help him. But like I said, when we created this system last decade, we started conservatively and then did an actuarial study at their request, and it came back that it would be fine now to let these other dozen or so, if they want to, participate.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you under modified open rule House Bill 714. This is an unemployment bill. Recently, the U.S. Department of Labor overruled the way we were handling unemployment for certain classified employees, and this code simply changes the law so that the Federal Department of Labor will allow us to administer our own unemployment insurance program.
Any questions? Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go back. Ms. Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hamilton, can you tell us how many bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and other seasonal employees will be impacted by 714?
Be happy to. The number that a number of people are trying to say is about 70,000, but what we found is the reports from the Georgia Department of Labor shows that it's less than 17,000. It's not only bus drivers, cafeteria workers, but it's also pre-K teachers within the private school system that are doing the exact same job as a public pre-K teacher, making the exact same money, but they also get to collect unemployment during their downtimes.
Further question? Did the committee consider whether they should, instead of penalizing the employees who have no control over the contracting length, whether, since this is an unemployment insurance issue, whether the law should actually address the concern that I think you articulated, which is that the companies are misusing the system? Can you explain why we are, instead of addressing the corporate side, we are addressing the worker side?
Sure. We have probably a handful of companies that are having an impact of about $5 million a year on the unemployment trust fund. Most of these companies are in existence that are doing this because the local school systems decided to outsource this. Those companies then in turn chose to pay them less money because they knew they could get the unemployment as part of their compensation. And what we're hoping is that the free market will work so that these companies, in order to keep those contracts, will actually raise the pay rate so that they can retain those workers so that they don't lose those respective contracts. And so I did make a concession that was brought to me. We changed the effective date from July 1st to January 1st in an attempt to give these workers in companies time to react to this change.
Any other questions? I'm gonna go to the wall. Mr. Dollar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very top of the page, 645. This is a bill to allow consumers to work with their insurance provider. It'll allow them to communicate and transmit with electronic information. It's a completely opt-in. Excuse me, we just ran up 2 flights of stairs.
You'd get up earlier, you wouldn't have to do it.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Forgot it was Friday and that we were meeting earlier today. We've worked very closely with the department on this bill, and all the language that you see has been hashed out with the department. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring under open rule House Bill 877. This bill is actually dealing with what we would normally call golf carts. They're now calling them PTVs so that they can clarify the language within code, and it just helps the local governments to have some guidelines by which to go by. All this language has come from a task force that has met for the last year, ACCG, GMA, and other local officials. And to the whip, we have taken care of Peachtree City in here, so they're not affected by it. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is your button pushed? Yeah.
Yes, sir, I believe it is. Under modified structured rule, third bill down, Senate Bill 125, just ask for your favorable consideration. This bill just keeps the liability or the responsibility that landowners have the way it is in the state of Georgia.
Has the senator been over here and asked for that bill?
I don't recall that he has, Mr. Chairman.
Next. There you go.
That the way it is, why do we need a bill?
The third restatement of torts, which is the law that it's a statement of, it's kind of like a survey of all laws in the states of the United States of America, and it has gone. They have come out with a third restatement on the issue of landowner liability, and it suggests that landowners should have more liability and responsibility to trespassers. And what this bill does is it says we're not accepting the third restatements. What we're doing is we provide landowners do not owe responsibility to trespassers other than what is already in the law of the state of Georgia. And that is you owe the duty of not willfully or intentionally harming them, and that's it, nothing more.
May I follow up with that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
As chair came out of our committee, it was filed last year in the Senate. It passed the Senate without dissenting votes. Came to our committee. I looked at it, I had concerns like you do, Mr. Leader, and I said, why we do this? We don't have statutes per se dealing with trespass. We have a body of law that goes back 200 years in Georgia dealing with trespass and minor children, age of knowledge, and that type of thing, and man-trap. But what's occurred is this treatise of torts, Prosser on torts, has recognized now a broadening in the duties owed by landowners and possessors of land to those who may be considered trespassers. Most of the businesses in Georgia do not want to see our courts opening up this issue to allow a different standard than what we have in Georgia addressing trespassers. So we held up the bill last year. We worked on it and studied during the time of, we were out of session. I had some professors in Georgia State working with me, and we came up with some language. And what we have done now is recognized there's not any more duty owed to a trespasser than currently we have in Georgia. And if you look at the bill on the second page, I'll read to you what we got. Georgia common law as exists and is applied to the doctrine of attractive nuisance in effect as of January 1, 2014 shall not be construed to be altered by this code section. This code section should not affect any immunities from or defenses to civil liability to which a lawful possessor of land may be entitled. So we have made sure that what we currently use and have in Georgia, which is mostly developed through case law, retains the standards for what we have as an obligation to a trespasser on property. We don't. It was a preemptive strike, you might say, to not have the courts start looking to this new language under Prosser's third edition on torts.
Now, when the good senator comes over here and asks for his bill, y'all remember what was just said, because I'm going to ask y'all to repeat it. And see if Mr. Stone can explain all that to us rather than having to have a House member explain it to us. Mr. Willard.
Thank you. I'll be a little quicker this time, Chairman. I've asked for House Bill 842 under modified open rule. This is a request that came to us by the Supreme Court, which deals with filings in their court of indigent filings of appeals. The fact is that if they're incarcerated, the fees can be waived, will be waived, and there would not be a need to have that person do what we call a pauper's affidavit. Certainly if they're in prison, the expectation is they're not able to pay the fee and are in fact paupers. The problem with affidavits is there's requirement to have a notary, and there are not many notaries locked up in the prisons.
Any questions? Thank you. Nobody else wants to do it. All right, we're going to set it. This is for Monday. Under modified open, HB 835. Do I hear a motion? Anyone opposed? Okay, it's on. Under open, HB 877. $877. Okay, go back to 877. Modified open. Any opposition? It's on. Under open, HB 645. Any opposition? It's on. Under modified open, HB 714. Have an objection. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? It's on. Under modified open, HB 646. Any opposition? It's on. Under structured, HB 719. Do I hear move? Any opposition? It's on. Under modified structure, HB 741. Any opposition? It's on. See y'all Monday.